All right, all right. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Poly with us. I'm here with my man Heem. How you feeling?
I'm good, man. Out here taking in this beautiful Texas sun, so I'm good.
Oh, you down in Texas? You have
Uh,
power?
you have power? Yeah, yeah. We're
Okay,
good down here. Yeah.
you in Texas. I just gotta, ask because the power situation is kind of hectic down there. They can't handle the cold, and now the grid is struggling with the heat. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure.
The first night, actually, the power did go out because of it was like a rainstorm up down here and stuff. But other than that, it's been fine.
All right,
Central Texas might
Texas.
be different. I don't know.
You know what? Texas is a state where I love a lot of cities in Texas. I Houston, great city. Dallas, San Antonio is underrated. I actually have fun while I was in San
Yeah.
Antonio as well. The Riverwalk, especially at night. The Riverwalk during the daytime, it's like it's underwhelming, but at night the Riverwalk is kind of like it looks great at night. Um,
San
Austin, I've been to
Antonio's
Austin.
it's like
Yeah,
yeah, Austin's really good too. Yeah, San
yeah,
Antonio's like an underrated tourist city. Like people, you look at Dallas and Houston; those are the places where you got to kind of know somebody. San Antonio, you
right.
can walk into like whatever and have fun down there, except for Alamo. Alamo is like whack and racist, but other than that, it's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
the Alamo is really whack. That's like the worst place I've been in San Antonio. I was like, what is
Yeah,
this? I was like, this, and I'm a history person too. And I still didn't enjoy the Alamo. I was like, this is whack.
absolutely whack.
But
And
they have a
it's
bunch
like
of
a
other
good.
stuff in San Antonio that's fun. But yeah,
hmm
Alamo
hmm
whack.
So yeah, man, but we're good down here.
Uh,
It's hot like it's supposed to be in Texas, so it's cool.
all right. Just the thing is, it's funny asking about power, but it's actually a serious issue down there.
hmm
People done lost their lives, and it's
hmm
unnecessary. It's all
hmm
because they didn't do what they need to do with the power grid. They gave the power to private corporations,
Yep.
and you could say you don't trust the government, and I don't. There's no reason to trust the government, but there's no reason to trust private corporations either. And the thing about private corporations, if you let them take a shortcut, most likely they're going to take that because they don't want to spend the money.
Yep. All our
So
profits.
yeah, and their oh man, Abbott, their governor, Texas governor is terrible.
Yeah.
Just a governor terrible, attorney general is terrible. They might have the worst senator out of 100, and that's saying a
Yeah.
lot in Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
So
Definitely the most
you know,
disliked senator out of 100, like easily. Like both parties, both his Republican colleagues and Democrats dislike him.
yeah,
And he's a eunuch too. So like, all these bad things about dude.
he do kind of like Nero a little bit. You take
Like a
his picture,
blowfish.
you know,
Disgusting dude, man. He's a nasty looking dude.
right? So it's funny. How do I love and hate Texas at the same time? It's crazy.
it's everybody's like that, man. It's like a lot of areas like that. Like Texas is one of those places where you can have a good time. There's good stuff down here, good opportunities, but it's also like, yeah, why do we have the worst politicians in the history of planet Earth? Like, why? But we'll see.
For real, for real.
Yeah,
But anyway, um, we have a little bit to talk about in a short
or
amount of time.
or
There's so much to get to. I know we didn't get to Juneteenth last week, so I know you want to have a little comment on that. What you want to speak about?
just real brief, man. Like being in Texas, where Juneteenth actually was a holiday in the state. I think for many years now, and because it started in Galveston, Texas, where after 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation in Galveston, Texas, slaves were finally told that hey, you don't have slaves anymore because we freed you out 2 years ago. Um, from that point to making this period now, it's remarkable, and it's something that we should like really take time and say this is great that this has become a federal holiday. But it's always about me. It's funny because a year ago, I doubt many people, especially Joe Biden or many people were thinking about like Juneteenth as anything. They probably had never even heard of it or even like thought about it. And so it's very interesting how in a year, because of the death of George Floyd and uprisings last year, across many places across the country and the world, um, this is now like something that it was pressing and got unanimous support in the Senate and got all but 14 votes in the House, and Joe Biden had to pass his bill to make Juneteenth a holiday. So I'm gonna commemorate it and be proud of it, and it's really good. And it's always good to have a day off as well. But and it's really good to see at least I don't know. I was in Buffalo, but in DC, there was so many like nice celebrations happening. People were doing stuff for Black people in the city and stuff. But I always feel like sometimes these things, these symbolic gestures, people think that all right, we've done it, we've made it, that's enough, and it's not even close to enough. Like Juneteenth, there was no transformation of power, no consequence, no anything to kind of like really acknowledge like the situation that's at hand. It's just the thing that we just kind of do to make sure that hey, we did this. This is enough, right? It's not. So just kind of like think about that. But I'm happy that it's a holiday. It was a long time coming, but we can definitely do a lot more to commemorate slavery during just to commemorate slavery and remember slavery in this country, and also do more to rectify damage of slavery, which is we talk about a lot with reparations. So just kind of want to bring that up.
Yeah, I'm trying to rectify damage my cat's trying to do right now. He's down. One of my cats is down there wrecking all sorts of havoc, trying to like chew the cord.
Yeah.
But as far as Juneteenth is concerned, there's a couple things that I want to say. First, life is really about balance. Like you can't go too far in any direction because it's an argument that that's all we do is symbolic actions and symbolism is worthless and I'm sick of symbolism and I feel that way. But at the same time, the history behind it is important. So symbolism do have some value. But the thing is, with the Democratic establishment, that all they really give us is symbolism, especially when it comes to Black issues.
Word.
So it need to be a balance. Yes, I do like symbolic actions. I do like Black history and people knowing the truth. But in the day, we need some real policies. So life is about balance. So we need to get some sort of equilibrium when it comes to symbolism and actually direct action. That's one. Number two, perspective. It is funny what area you grow up in the country or in the world just basically shape your perspective. When I was I didn't realize how different everything is from where you live at till I actually went to the military. I was in the Air Force after high school. Right? When I went to the Air Force, there was a bunch of people that never heard of Juneteenth. And to me, it was shocking because in Buffalo, I grew up in Buffalo. Like we had Juneteenth celebrations ever since I can remember. I remember being like a little kid, like maybe 4 or 5, going to Juneteenth celebrations here in Buffalo in the 80s.
Wow.
So every since I can remember, we had Juneteenth celebrations here. It happened every year. So I always knew about Juneteenth, and it's kind of like I don't know what the proper word I'm looking for is, but funny is not it. But it's jarring and interesting to me to see how just now people are learning about Juneteenth, and it's something that if you're from the area of Buffalo, you grew up in the city of Buffalo, you knew about your whole life,
right?
Because it always happened. It was just a thing. Like we didn't even question. Like I remember at one point I assumed Juneteenth happened everywhere for a while because it was just part of what happened here. Come to find out, it's not in a lot of places. So like it's just funny where you live at, how it shapes your environment and the way you think and what you know and what you don't know.
I grew up in PG County, and we didn't have Juneteenth celebrations until like I think 2009 or 10, and this is all predominantly Black county. All this stuff is there, and there wasn't anything until 2009 or 10, and they only made it a holiday in the county. I think last year. So you know what I mean? Like
wow.
Yeah. So it's it's just it's something that
Well, it wasn't a holiday here. We just had the celebration. They just made it a holiday this year as well. Before Biden did it, they did it here after the George Floyd situation and murder. I shouldn't call it situation, but murder. But everybody knows about Juneteenth here. So we had the parade. It was a whole weekend. We had the parade on Friday, and maybe. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think one of the reasons why it's probably bigger here than in a lot of other areas. Buffalo was a big stop on the Underground Railroad
Right.
because we
Right.
borderline Canada.
Right.
Like Buffalo borderline Ontario, Canada, so it was a
Right.
big hub in the Underground Railroad. So that might be one of the reasons. We still have Underground Railroad tours here in the city if you come here. It's one of the churches where they used to hide the escaped Africans that escaped from
Mm-hmm.
slavery.
Mm-hmm.
There was a little areas. It is funny. A lot of these areas that was hiding it wasn't big at all. It was like you have to go see how small
Yeah.
it is. It's crazy. And then you go up to because they went from Buffalo, they would go up right to like Lewiston area north of Buffalo, and you see the water and how they had to actually cross into Canada because they had to go over the water to go to Canada. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, it's crazy. Like
Right.
that's so dangerous. In the area here is a statue of Harriet Tubman um, having a child in her hand, giving it to the parents on the boat. And it's like, yo, it's super crazy as hell though.
That's crazy. That's dope. Yeah.
Yeah,
One day I'm gonna go up there and visit that place.
yeah. You know, Buffalo got some stuff. I mean, if fires like like nightlife, it's
Well,
not,
yeah.
not really, not really the city for that. I ain't gonna lie. Our lounge scene is terrible. We don't really have lounge. It's like we have hood bars here,
Yeah.
or we have upscale bars that's mainly white. We don't really have anything in between, really.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's getting better. We have a few spots, but it's just like, man, I'm grown too. I'm not trying to go to any clubs. Like,
Right.
we need some nice black upscale lounges here, man. We gotta make that happen. But
Right. One
you
day.
know, but and if you come, make sure you don't come in the winter. The winters.
No, absolutely not.
But
Absolutely not.
it's at least now, right now, the weather nice here. You can come, you know, hit up Niagara Falls. Like when Canada open, we can maybe go to Canada. Niagara Falls, Canada is much better.
Okay.
So, but it is what it is. Anyway, that's my thoughts with Juneteenth. You remember Trump said he didn't hear Juneteenth until like last year. Remember when Trump little comments on Juneteenth, he didn't.
Yeah.
But you know what? As much dumb stuff as Trump say, that wasn't the dumbest because of, like a lot of people
didn't.
haven't heard it. So
Yeah.
I didn't get at him as much as other people did for that. There's plenty of other stuff you could get at Trump about.
Exactly.
So, but all right. But speaking, I mentioned my, city. And this is kind of a continuation from last week. We mentioned local politics.
Mm-hmm.
So Buffalo been in the news today because New York State had their primaries yesterday. I voted. And we are the biggest city to elect a socialist mayor since Milwaukee in about 1960.
Right, yeah.
So it's really interesting to get people feelings on it. And it's never just one scenario. A bunch of different things happen for this. First of all, I should say more than likely going to be the mayor because our current mayor, he haven't conceded, but that doesn't make a difference.
Nobody cares.
There's speculation that he might try to do a write-in campaign in November because the Republicans don't even bother running candidates here because they're not going to win. Like we haven't had a Republican mayor here since like the 60s. We might have one independent Republican common council member. But usually all the common council members is a Democrat. This is a Democrat city in the city itself. The county is a little bit different. But there's speculation he might try to do a write-in campaign. It's more than likely won't succeed, but it's not a guarantee it won't, just because now that she identified herself as a socialist, establishments don't like that.
I'm scared. They get scared. Yep.
And the Democratic Party in New York State, the establishment Democratic Party, won't like the fact that Brown got defeated because he's a former party chair of the Democratic Party in New York State. He's really close with Andrew Cuomo. So, and he still got money in the bank.
Yep.
He still got money in the bank. And if he does try to do a writing campaign, I'm sure corporate forces will go full fledged, especially since now we're getting national attention and giving him money for a writing campaign. So it's not completely over, but more than likely she's going to do it. I just wanted to preface with that.
Just to give like a little example, in DC, I want to say in 2000 and I think it was 2002, Anthony Williams was the mayor of DC. I think he had lost the Democratic primary. It's his second term run for mayor. He lost the primary, and he ended up doing a writing campaign himself because himself during the general election, and actually got on and won as a mayor for DC and stuff. So I'm not trying to scare you, nothing like that. If you want to do that, but just saying that it's happened before where somebody's done that, especially if they're a big name like Mayor Brown is, who I think he was mayor for like 4 terms or 5 terms.
4 terms.
Yeah.
16 years.
Yeah. 16 years. Yeah. So,
and,
so don't. Good.
And just to mention, like, he is a historic figure here. He was the first Black mayor of the city. And like I said, he's been mayor for 16 years. So he still have the name recognition, but I'll get into what made this possible in a second. But just to buffer your point, not just in DC, but you remember Joe Lieberman, right? He lost the Democratic nomination to Led Lamont, I believe it was. That was his name. And I think Lamont is now the governor of Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken now.
I think you're right, but,
yeah, he won the Democratic nomination over Senator Joe Lieberman, who basically was almost a Republican, basically. He endorsed John McCain in 2008. But he ran as an independent in the general election, and he was able to win the nomination. In this case, Brown won't be able to do that, but he can do a writing campaign. But, so that just goes to show you that it's not fully over, but more than likely she will be the next mayor of the city.
Okay. Well, happy for you all to get up her, even just the reading about it, even like, obviously, like, I'm a pretty leftist person myself, but that was actually the thing that was like really excited for. It's more so that she tackled a machine candidate in the state of New York. Like you said, your current mayor, Mayor Brown, he is pretty much like really close with like Andrew Cuomo, who's like the Don of New York State, pretty much. And for her to come up out on top as a Black woman, that's very progressive. And she's saying she's a socialist now. That's remarkable, and kudos to y'all for doing that, for taking that step. Hopefully in November she's able to actually ascend to the mayorship and become mayor of your city, and hopefully she come in and actually create some like really positive changes for your city. So that's really good news.
I hope so. And for each area is different. We was talking about this last week. It's hard to have one model fit across the nation and local cities because the dynamics is so different from area to area. Now, the dynamics here is that Mayor Brown is still popular among a certain segment of the population here. Obviously, you don't get elected, for 4 terms without being somewhat popular, right? But over the last year, a lot of people soured on him in the city. For one, Buffalo have made progress since he's been mayor, because Buffalo was basically a dead city almost. Now, it's still not the most popular city in the world, but we had somewhat of a resurgence in the area. But a lot of those gains haven't been made in the typical areas you expect. A lot like the Black areas in the city, it's not. It's still a major struggle. We still the 3rd poorest city in the country. Poverty is real here. There's a lot of struggle, and a lot of the average people haven't seen the progress the city has made. A lot of the progress has been focused in the downtown area, and the business districts. There's been a lot of construction going on, but people in our skin tone, a lot of them is not getting the jobs. Now, I won't. To be fair, he has done some stuff in the Black neighborhood. We did have some job training center, a job training center that opened in the Black area here in the East Side. So I won't say been absolutely nothing, but as much progress the city has made, the progress has been very slow in certain areas.
Right.
So those people was frustrated. And his response, I think, was really sold it. His response to the George Floyd protest, when the older white gentleman was pushed
That's right.
and hit the ground and blood was all out his
That's
ear
right.
and stuff. And the police lied about the report. Initially,
That's right.
he defended the police. And not until it became a national story and pressure got put on, he kind of changed the story a little bit. And then because of that, more attention got put on Carrier Horn. Carrier Horn was a former police officer in Buffalo that was fired in 2006.
That's right.
She got fired because she intervened when a fellow police officer was using excessive force, and that police officer ended up striking her, and they got into it, and they fired her without her pension. She was like a few months, I believe, away from her pension, and they fired her. So she wasn't able to collect her pension for over a decade. Supreme Court in New York ruled that she should get her pension. And the cop that they took the side of, he ended up being corrupted. He ended up going to jail a few years later. So she was proven right in the whole situation. So it brought back that issue. And then it forced the city to pass like a version of police reform called Carrier's Law, where if a police officer see another officer use excessive force or doing the wrong thing, they must step in. So the city did pass that here.
That was last week, right? That was last week, right?
No, they didn't pass that last week. It's been passed for a few months now.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been passed for a little bit now. But that was a big thing. It did pass. So that spotlight, it made some positive changes, but it did bring about some of those old issues. And then the whole problems with Andrew Cuomo as well. The problems he's having, and he's very linked to Andrew Cuomo. That didn't help. So there was a variety of reasons. And then on off-year elections where there's not a presidential election or a governor's race, a lot of times turnout is lower, and insurgent candidates can make gains during this too. So it's a combination of a bunch of different things. And you have some people that just did stay home because they wasn't messing with Byron Brown, didn't know enough about India Walton, that's the candidate. So there's a variety of reasons to went into it.
Excuse me.
And then India ran a very grassroots campaign, and Mayor Brown made a mistake. His strategy was not to acknowledge her. He wouldn't debate. He wouldn't debate her. He basically didn't acknowledge she existed. And meanwhile, she ran a grassroots campaign. She had the endorsement of DSA of Buffalo and the DSA National Party. Our Revolution endorsed her. She had the Workers' Family Party here in New York State. So she got a bunch of grassroots support. She's a nurse. People can relate to the story, a regular person that had struggles growing up. Fairly young. She's only a year older than me.
Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah. She was heavily involved in her union.
That's right.
So, she had the union politics. So, yeah, she's a political outsider. So, everything came together for her.
Yeah, man. Like, I think a big mistake that a lot of these candidates have, the bigger, like, already established names or whatever candidates, is that they don't, they forget about the community. They don't go to debates. They don't like really address community needs. I know. I remember that documentary that came out a couple of years ago about the 4 women that were running for Congress. AOC was a part of them. They followed them as they were running for Congress. Cori Bush was also a part of it. She lost that race to the incumbent, but she won 2 years later. But
Lacey Clay, I believe she lost to, right?
Yeah, Lacey Clay. That's right. Yeah. And so they all made the mistake of like, yeah, I'm not going to acknowledge this insurgent that's running against me. They're not anything. For the most part, it works. Most time it works. Like usually, like you can ignore them and it's okay. But I think in your Mary Grace case right there, what's happened is that she was on the ground working hard, like you mentioned. She was able to pull endorsements from different parts of the state to come in and help her and help on the grassroots. And so what happens is that what usually is like a small, tiny, like I'm doing this for myself campaign, which happened down here with Michaela Ayers, who she was running against Steny Hoyer, and it was my congressperson when I lived in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have the groundswell of support, and she ran pretty much on her own. Whereas like in this case and in other cases, you're able to attract like people to come in and help you, and that gives you more resources. So even though you don't have the monetary capital that the incumbent may have, what you'll have is like people on the ground actually like doing the work for you and actually like knocking on doors, and you're attending different meetings and functions and listening to the community and learning what's going on in the community. And so these things are really important. Like I said, it's hard to say for each place where you're running. There's no real comment for it. There's no real magic bullet that gets everything going. But if progressives really, really want things to move in our favor, I think local is the way. And I think local is the way as let's get our resources into these local candidates and start like getting them on board. And also, we texted over this over the week. Start grooming candidates to start like being on your aligned with your interests. And so if they want to step up to bigger seats and bigger races, that person's actually had your back, and they've done this at this level. They're gonna ask for your help or run to a bigger level, and you're like, well, I helped you get here, so let's make sure that you're doing the things that you did prior when you got our help, and so forth. So I think all that's like really important. It's a long-term strategy. The GOP does that. Like that's one thing that Republicans do. They got like a huge bench of like people that can run for offices. And if you notice, like they cycle them in and out. Like these guys, like if they make it to the congressional level, for instance, they're not there for like super long. They're there for like maybe 10 years tops, and then they go into like some big lobbying firm, and there's a younger person that steps in and does stuff. They have a huge bench, and it's something that I know the Democratic Party doesn't care about because they love seniority, but I think that progressives can really like make inroads if they step in and say, let's start grooming candidates, let's start getting people into these local races and start developing our own bench, so that when the time comes and you bring in your corporate shill from the Democratic Party side, and you have like a progressive candidate that's actually been in the streets, that actually knows the community, that's actually talking to people, and they have this huge network of people that supports them. Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. Because you may have the money, but I literally have people behind me, and they know who I am, and I'm a much bigger name than this person that you've airlifted from whatever like corporate or party infrastructure establishment that you just dropping into this race because they happen to have a PO box in this county. You know what I mean? So that's the important thing.
And I'm not going to lie. And not just in this case, but in all these races, I'm always concerned about once they get in office, because one thing she is a political outsider, and now because she caught them by surprise, she did an interview today locally, and the news stations are starting to ask her some tough questions, and some of the questions she had to be like, "I'm thinking" and stuff like that, which is no problem thinking, but some of these answers have to be a little crisp, or even if you don't have the answers, it's like, once we get in, we're going to study this and blah, 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 because one of the things is she don't use the term defund the police, but she does want to reallocate funding from police departments to mental health services. And she was a nurse, which makes sense because she was in the health field. That's going to be a fight right there. So you have to have your answers ready to go, and you can't hesitate. But on a bright note, what she did when they asked was she a socialist, she didn't hesitate. She said yes, and she explained why. She gave very sharp answers for that, so that's kudos. So we just have to monitor the situation and see how it goes. On another note too, it's not just about stuff like mayors, but we had a sheriff race that I'm pretty happy about too. At least the person I wanted to win the primary won, and those important positions as well. We have to watch stuff like that, DA races, because if we can dominate in these areas, like we can at least get a bench, and we can kind of make some laws in these local areas. Like for instance, each local area is different. Buffalo just we in a unique situation because marijuana just became legal in New York State, so we're gonna have extra
Hmm.
revenue.
Hmm.
Discussions what to do with that extra revenue can be had now, especially since we about to get a more progressive mayor. What can we do with those extra funds?
Right.
So stuff like that is very important. And to contrast that, because we had the election at NYC, which kind of went the other way, and I kind of want to talk about that and the propaganda of crime, of the way the media is discussing crime in general.
Right. Right.
And I hate to brag, but we was ahead of this.
Yeah.
We was ahead of this before the media started making an issue over it. I read something in New York Times like, oh, I see the game plan. Crime is going up, so they're going to use this to turn the conversation away from police reform
Yeah.
and into crime is rising. So let's not do police reform. Now, Heem, can you answer this for me?
Okay.
I'm not a dumb person. I never claim to be the smartest person in the world. So
Right.
maybe it's something I'm missing. But what do crime going up have to do with police abusing their power and using excessive force? I don't get the correlation. Can you explain that to me? Because
Well,
I'm lost.
I'm not a smart person either.
Mhm.
I struggle with a lot of things, but I'm gonna have to. My answer would be that it doesn't have anything to do with the other. Crime going up has nothing to do with police brutality, excessive force, criminal conduct, none of that stuff that police officers have done, or murder. And as we've seen in the New York City race, they elected Eric Adams, a former cop, who actually, like, I read recently, like, he was actually a Republican for a few years.
He called himself a conservative Republican. His own words.
And so they, now granted, he has been critical of the police force in New York City, but it's that liberal criticism that it's not really criticism. It's just more so like we need to train them better and give them more money to make sure they're doing things right. But when push comes to shove, and when there's another police related excessive force incident in New York City, whether it's someone getting choked out over selling loosies, or plungers being used in inappropriate ways and so forth, or probably getting shot up a million times, I'm sure that he's gonna kowtow to whatever the whims of the New York police the union is in the city and stuff. And so to give backstory, Eric Adams is he won. They had a Democratic primaries last night, and he so far is the leader of the race. They haven't declared him as the winner yet, but he has like a pretty big lead right now. And there's been that race has had so much wildness. With starting with him, there's stories that he doesn't even live in Brooklyn for real, even though he's like the Brooklyn borough president and is running for mayor of New York City. He might actually live in New Jersey, which is hilarious to me. There's the Yang movement that his campaign was so interesting to me, dog. Like, when he ran for president, he had a multicultural campaign. I'm not a Yang fan at all. Like, I've never been an Andrew Yang fan. So let's like that. I'll put that out there. But his campaign was very multicultural. He had black people, white people. He was kind of having like a nice little base around young people that were worrying about like, hey, capitalism screwed me over. Hey, why don't you give me UBI? And from that to where he is today, where his base was like, I think, like rich people in the outer boroughs and Hasidic Jewish people. None of the multiculturalness that he had in the presidential campaign. It was really fascinating to see that. But they had some really bad choices in New York this year, and I kind of feel bad for him because none of them like really seemed that appealing, at least on the Mill side.
Right. I agree. I'll get to Yang real quick before I get back to Adams. Um, this really was Yang race to lose, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
He had the most name recognition. Even
Yep.
though Adams had name recognition from being Brooklyn Borough president and some of the other ones, but he had by
Mm-hmm.
far, because he ran for president, the most name recognition. He was leading in the polls,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yep.
I don't know. Me and Fa talked about this. His association with Bloomberg, terrible idea for the go. Yes, you get money. I don't know why he thought Bloomberg was popular. He's not. And all his
You know why I
baggage.
thought that? You know why I thought Bloomberg was the way to go? Because he
But
doesn't know New York City. That's why
Right.
he tried to run for
Right.
mayor of New York City and didn't know New York City.
Right. Right. And the only thing I liked about Yang, I didn't think he was ever impressive in his presidential run. I thought
Mhm.
his debates, he looked awkward. And if you wasn't talking about UBI, none of his answers was good, really.
Yeah.
Um, they would ask him, they would ask him a question about, okay, what do you think about, and of course the media would never ask a question like this, but I'll just give an example. What do you think about the genocide in Yemen, and should the U.S. continue to support Saudi Arabia if they going to do this ridiculous bombing in Yemen
Hmm.
and a genocide? Well, I think if we give UBI, there will
Yeah.
be no reason for us to support or be involved in it. So I think UBI is the answer. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
That's actually how I went with him for a lot of these questions. So he was an embarrassing candidate on the national level and then New York saw it as well.
Mr. Yang, what do you think about the surgeons, and our democracy being a risk? What do you think about January 6th? Well, if we had UBI, that wouldn't happen.
Hmm. Everything.
Yeah,
Hey,
Mr.
Yang,
Yang,
how do you feel about affordable health care? Well,
UBI,
UBI, UBI is the answer to all this stuff. He just wasn't a serious candidate.
right. And the good thing is, I will give him credit. He did give UBI the
Hmm.
push it need. UBI is not new. A few years ago, I talked about how they did the pilot program in Stockton. They did a
Hmm.
pilot program in Oakland
That's right.
before Yang candidacy, but he's the one that put in a national spotlight, so he deserves credit for that. And he is talking about automation, which I think that we're not talking about enough.
Hmm.
Automation is going to be an issue. It's becoming an issue now,
Yep.
and I even think some progressives kind of laughed at it, like it's some futurism. I'm like, no, it's very real. Automation is taking a lot of jobs, and
Hmm.
it's only going to get worse. And when that happens, what are we going to do? That's a valid discussion. So I give him credit for that. Now, because I agree with you on one or two issues, doesn't mean I think you should run uh, a country, a state, or a city. That's where it comes down to. And I was going to give Yang a chance, but the more he talked, I was like, okay, maybe not president, but it'd be interesting. So I wanted to see where his campaign went, and the
Hmm.
more he talked, the less I liked him.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where it came down to Yang.
He's always been kind of like uh, I hate to say it, but he's always been kind of like a grifter to me. Like I always see him as like finding some next opportunity to jump on, but he's not a serious candidate. He's one of those candidates that happened because of Donald Trump. But like if we had a stronger vetting process in the past, I don't know if he gets to that level. But I will give him credit. But I will give him a lot of credit, like you mentioned, like UBI and automation are really like important things that
Very important topic.
are gonna be needed to talk about. And I'm glad that he brought up. I don't really know how serious he was about it. If I'm gonna be 100% real with you, but I think there are important things that we did. But my biggest crux for him when he talked about UBI was that he never addressed like the other social programs, and I always felt that in his mind, yeah, give you all $1,000 a month or $1,000 a month, and we'll start taking money away from like Medicaid and Medicare, and we'll figure out how to like limit Social Security and all this stuff, like do things that will cut down the safety net. That was always my concern with him, and he never articulated that clearly. And that's when I started looking at him like, all right, this guy's kind of like a funny dude that I shouldn't take seriously. Then he started going on with like the Asians no map stuff and all these other goofy things that I was like, yeah, I don't know how any person with any respect can vote this dude, but it's neither here nor there.
The math thing I found kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't mind that. It was just a marketing strategy, so I was like, whatever with that. But um, all answers can't be UBI, and the UBI he was proposed in New York City was laughable,
Hmm.
really. And I understand you can't do the same thing on a city local level that you can do nationally, but it. I
Yeah,
think he was opposing UBI for about 500,000 residents in New York. New York is a city over 8 billion people.
8 billion
That's
people.
not really gonna do nothing. But anyway, he conceded. So back to Adams. And my problem with Adams is this. I talked about this with Fa as well. Um, I feel like a lot of his support come from him being a brother, and I give black people the benefit of the doubt too. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, I don't care if you black if you support harmful policies. Now, when it comes to something like stop and frisk, the fact that he just didn't outright say stop and frisk is the wrong policy really bothered me. He says that like the way it was applied was wrong. No, it's wrong. Period.
Right.
Stop and frisk is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Like, is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, is a
Word.
violation of your rights to privacy. You searching people with no probable cause.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even effective policy.
Yep.
Well over 90% of the time, they found nothing on people.
Yep.
And then when it comes to stop and frisk, you have to worry about police playing evidence, because NYPD don't have the best of reputation. They notoriously corrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna put that out there. Like,
Yep.
it is what it is, and I don't care who get mad. Look at the facts. Look at all the things the NYPD have done throughout the history, sticking plungers in people, anuses, shooting 40 something times, multiple occasions, whether it's Abdul Diallo, whether it's Sean Bell. Look at the Eric Gardner situation. So what stop and frisk did, it gave police the license not to just search quote unquote thugs and criminals, but innocent people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know a lot of black people in New York that's not street at all. They like black hipsters. People like that was getting stopped and frisked because of the area they was walking in,
Yep.
or if they was in a certain neighborhood. It basically gave police the right to just harass people. Look at Khalif Browder
Mm-hmm.
in that
Mm-hmm.
situation. So, and this is why I want to you to come in at too. I'm actually worried about the propaganda that's going on, because I feel like some of the propaganda is infiltrating our community as well.
Okay.
And I understand it, because we are the ones that's suffering the impact of crime going up in these high crime areas. Although crime is going up in rural right areas too. It's not just the cities. But I watched CNN today, right? And
that's a big mistake.
you got to watch it. Even time to time, I'll watch a little bit of Fox. I can't stomach it too long. I even watch a little bit of Fox News time to time, or listen to a conservative talk radio just to see what it is they talking about, because I never want to live in a bubble. It's hard. I don't watch it too much because it's nauseating.
Yeah.
But I want to say RIP to Milton Grant. They interviewed his wife, and those you don't know who he is, it was a terrible situation where senseless robbery. He ended up getting shot, losing his life, and just a terrible situation. Left a widow behind. His wife was on CNN, right? And don't get me wrong. Let me be clear. I'm not going at his wife. I'm not saying anything bad about her, but this is mainly towards CNN and how I think they're using her grief to push a certain narrative. So when they interviewed her, they asked her, "What do you think is the cause of all this crime that's going on?" Right. That's what they asked a grieving widow right now. And her reply was, my husband worked hard. He liked nice things and he worked hard for them. But there's so many people that don't want to work hard for it, or that don't want to work hard. They can collect unemployment, and they can, so instead of working hard to collect unemployment, then they do these crimes basically. And again, grieving widow, I'm not mad at that. Right. The fact is that people on unemployment, there's not evidence that they committing a high amount of crime at all. So, but I think that's the type of message they want to get off, and it's more powerful when you have a truly grieving widow out there saying this, and they was asking her, what do she want to be done about crime? And she said that she don't know, basically. But the whole segment was basically wrapped around this poor woman grief to push a note that crime is out of control, and we need to get tough on crime. And when you do that, you get stuff like the 94 crime bill.
Yep.
So this is very dangerous to me. I know you didn't see the segment, but what I described, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, so let's like step back. You know, what does the police do? If you want to like think about it, like just that's the question. What does police do? They protect property.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And property is who has property? People that are wealthy, right? All the stuff that you ever see, when the uprisings happened last year, when they happened in Baltimore, the biggest thing was always like, hey, they burnt down the CVS, or they burnt down a restaurant, or the LA riots happened, they burnt down businesses and all this stuff. Never about the actual pain as to why they're doing stuff. It's always about the property damage and stuff, because that's what police are supposed to do, is protect property. And property is a part of the capital class's like way of keeping their status and stuff. They have property, have money and stuff. And our corporate media is what they work with the capital class. They work with the elites. So you have to kind of consider that as the first thing. But in this case here, like it's like I'm not. There's no absolute like people committing crimes. You're not going to see me defend them at all. And I'm not doing that now. And especially in this case where someone essentially lost their lives in a robbery gone wrong. It's horrible. But I don't want to say but let's also consider that we are like still kind of like we are in a global depression in a way. You know what I mean? Like we are, like what happened last year with the pandemic and the economy stopping and people losing their jobs and no government support has led to like a surge in crime because people are poor and desperate. That's what happens. People lose their resources. They lose their way of making money. They lose their way of doing things that they were accustomed to doing. You see a uptick in crime. That's not even like, that's just you mentioning like it's happening in rural areas across the country. It's happening all over America. Lets you know that like this isn't just an isolated thing where you need to like start increasing the police force in Black communities and cities and stuff, but that this is a problem that's happening across America because we just had a world-altering event where people lost employment and lost their way of living. And granted, there's like unemployment that's better than what they were paid before, but wasn't enough for a lot of people. And in some instances, we didn't do enough to get people on their feet in this country in general. That's what's happening. And the narrative now is that crime's gone up. And why is crime going up? I don't know what's going on. Why? We know why. We know why. So now
this was predictable.
And it's predictable, exactly. So let's figure out how to let's make sure that we can like, instead of saying after last year where we were lamenting excessive police force after the death of George Floyd and after I think there's like after the death of Chandra of Shorty in Kentucky. I'm getting tired of
Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor. Yeah, I want to say there's about 10 different names I wanted to say, but I was going to say Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor and many other people that were killed over the course of the last year or so by the police. The predictable, when crime goes up, the predictable thing is like, well, this all happened last year, but those are a couple instances. Let's just give more money to the police. Let's start getting more police.
Right.
Like, no, that's not the answer. We know that's not the answer because,
right.
It's never been the answer.
You know what frustrating to me? Why can't two things be true at the same time? Mm-hmm. Why can't we say, okay, we need to address crime, but we also need police reform? My thing is this: I wouldn't necessarily be upset with more police presence if we solve the underlying problem of excessive force and qualified immunity.
Yeah.
Now, until we solve that, I'm very hesitant for that. Because you've given a lot of these people, and there's multiple problems. FBI reports white supremacists infiltrating police units. I mean, that's from Republican presidents, FBI's. There's multiple reports of that. There's Black cops that issued statements of how racist their departments are. There's more than overwhelming evidence of the biases that a lot of these police officers have. But again, we're not saying all,
right?
But we haven't solved the problem of excessive force. And cops, I don't care if you're in a high crime area or not, you have to look at each situation as a unique circumstance in a vacuum. Okay. In this particular incident, what happens and what is the appropriate course of action, with the appropriate course of force? Can I just use a verbal? Can I talk this person down? And too often they go straight to just violence. Um, Tamir Rice shot within 2 seconds. He had a toy gun. 13-year-old with a toy gun. You think, I mean, there's video of that. If they try to say, oh, you know, he could have been in danger, you think he was pointing a toy gun at police officers? Come on, let's be honest. And that police officer who killed him had a bad history in itself. Until we solve the problem of these cops with multiple incidents still being in police force, until we solve the problem of qualified immunity and not be able to sue the cops themselves, going after them personally, till we solve the problem of no consequences if your body cam is not on.
Right.
I mean, until we solve the problem of ridiculous amount of excessive forces and real consequences. Don't talk to me about upping the police presence. Like, yes, let's do police reform first, and then yes, I wouldn't necessarily mind more police presence in appropriate areas, but it have to be the right type of strategy. But before you have police presences too, how about job programs for the youth?
Exactly.
And also, I don't know if you remember this, Heem, but I remember multiple experts predicted a spike in crime.
Yeah.
Because of the downturn of the economy, because that's that always happens.
Yeah.
Right. And that's no excuse. Especially in like the Milton Grant situation. Like, there's no excuse for that. You know, it's bad enough you robbing somebody that was minding their own business, but it just takes it to the next level. Not only is a robbery, you killed them over something so trivial like jury, or a little bit of money you do get for this. You know, you get caught, you're gonna spend the rest of your life. It's so stupid. You destroy the whole family. So that's not an excuse. And this is the other thing too. When we talk about police reform and we talk about criminal justice reform, Heem, I never heard you say that somebody that commit murder shouldn't be in jail.
No one's ever said that.
We've been talking for a while. I don't think I ever heard you say that.
No one's ever said that people that commit serious crimes shouldn't seek punishment. That's never been a conversation. Like that's why when we had this discussions, it comes from a disingenuous position, because people are coming in with like, well, you're saying this, you're saying that. I'm like, no one's saying that if somebody commits like a serious and heinous crime, they shouldn't seek punishment for it. But what we're saying is that excessive force of the police force is there. We need to do something about that, and we need to do something. We need to have crime prevention, because let's be real, let's be honest with ourselves here. Like, police don't like stop crime. What stops crime is like having people get educations, having people have jobs, having people be able to support themselves. That's what stops crime, especially serious crime. We've forgotten that in this country. We decided that like people, police are superheroes. So they can like prevent, like they can jump through your window and catch a bullet through the teeth, like Superman or something like that. That's not what they do. They come in, they solve crimes, they try to find what happened, but they don't prevent crime. So we have to like start thinking about that. And ideally, like I said before, you want a world where you don't need police and you don't need that stuff, and we should start working towards that. We don't need to like continue like having people out there that create hostile criminal environments. I mean, there's we're talking about excessive force now, but I don't know if you've been seeing these videos that the police officers flipping cars over and stuff, or in the case of that guy, I think in New York, who his daughter was killed. I think it was like last December. I forgot to read his name right now, but a family of four, they were driving. They were just speeding. They weren't even speeding, actually. Oh no, I'm sorry. They were supposed to be pulled over. Trying to pull over, find a place to pull over. The officer instead like
hit the back of the vehicle. Yeah, I seen that.
Back of the vehicle. Hit the back of the vehicle and killed a little girl. There's another instance where a pregnant woman. The same thing happened to a pregnant woman. She like was trying to find an area to pull over at. Couldn't find one, but had her hazards up saying, "Hey, I want to pull over. Just relax."
Right.
Officer couldn't say, "All right, let's wait for it to pull over." No, he had to run up behind them and tilt them over. And they're just speeding.
That was actually a pregnant woman. Too. Yep.
A pregnant woman, yeah.
And
That's what
that's
they
the
do,
thing
man.
too. And that's the thing too that a lot of these people don't realize. Eventually, once you start giving them all this problem, it's not just going to be black people. Eventually, you
No.
actually already started to see a few cases of police brutality happening among white people they disagree with as well. You know, that's starting to happen
Mm-hmm.
because people already gave them unfiltered range to do whatever they want to, as long as they're not rich, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not a this is a problem that we're all like gonna be like being afflicted with, and it's like
But
why we want to like give them more money to solve problems when they don't even have the answers in their own apartment, and they're still like being excessive and they're still being violent against people. So we have to start asking these questions and giving them
right.
more
And
money, saying that crime is up and we do something about this without like understanding the underlying issues of like people
and
losing their economic standing. These are issues, and y'all don't want to talk about it.
right. And again, it is frustrating because sometimes I feel like progressives don't combat these simple talking points. Again, nobody ever said that people that commit violent crimes shouldn't be in prison. Or matter of fact, I think they
Mm-hmm.
should be in prison for life for something
Mm-hmm.
senseless like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nobody said that somebody commit a violent crime should even be eligible for bail. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like when we talk about bail reforms for low level offenders, where you
Right.
was having these ridiculous amount of bail, people having to put up their house for a low level crime, something
A
like
gram of weed,
shoplifting or
shoplifting,
weed,
or yeah.
or right, or people being in prison for years on end for a small amount of drugs
Mm-hmm.
with mandatory minimums. That's what we was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think anybody want somebody that do a violent assault, rape, or pedophilia to have a light sentence. Nobody ever said that. Stop conflating issues.
Right.
But the thing is, they lump everybody as a major criminal, even if it's something petty.
Like speeding, like going 10 miles
Right.
over the speed limit. And the brother's name I mentioned earlier about the family that daughter that was killed, it was
Hmm.
Tristan Goods. He was in Brooklyn, and he was in like Ulster, which is like outside of New York City.
Yep.
And they were chasing him, and they actually pepper sprayed the car first, and then they ran them into like a at high speed into like a barrier, killing the guy's daughter. And he had a car of women, him and his like his wife and his kids. They were all
Right.
like little girls, and this is horrible.
Now, before we get out of here, and yeah, that's horrific. Biden and Biden makes me
Like,
mad. Like no talk on police reform,
no.
but you can give police departments an extra 350 billion. Although to be fair, there in his program, there's also incentives for summer youth jobs and stuff like that as well, which I think is good. But you know, remember this is Mr. Crime Bill itself. It's not as bad as the crime bill or anything like that. But before we give police departments more money, we need to solve qualified immunity and police reform.
Right.
It can't. I don't want them getting more money till that's solved. But you know, we have to believe better. Us as progressives have to market better.
Mm-hmm.
I always said that defund the police was a bad term to use because it confused people. There's literally people thinking that there's going to be no police at all in the city if you defund the police. You can explain exactly what you think of doing, and it's just okay. Instead of that, however millions or billions of dollars you want to give that police department and increasing their budget, let's put that to mental health, and let's have police focusing on serving their community
Right.
in their capacity, and let the mental health professionals do their job. Why are you having police respond to situations that they're not trained to handle, that they're not professional? You have licensed counselors, social workers, mental health professionals for a reason to deal with that type of stuff. Police officers are not trained to do that. So,
indeed, man. I mean, that's the gist of it. You have to market things better, and I don't disagree with that. But I like I said before, I think that we need to start talking about a world without like having like police like that. Let's start like envisioning that world, and that doesn't mean that they go away tomorrow. That just means like let's start talking about what that looks like. Let's start enacting policies that make it so that we can have this utopian world. We don't need police. Putting more police on the field on the, out there, especially now, like in a lot of different cities where they're actually like intentionally like, and at least they've been saying in New York City, where they're actually like intentionally like slowing down like enforcement because they want crime to go up, so they can let people know that, hey, y'all need us, don't y'all? Yeah, right. we need y'all because you're not doing your jobs. You know what I mean? Like that's happening in a lot of places around the country as well. So it's like, I don't know, man. Like I get really frustrated that when there's an uptick in crime, the immediate thought is like, let's give the police more guns and give them more ammo to inflict violence instead of let's start figuring out what's the basis of crime and let's start solving that.
Right. And it's that they blaming it on unemployment benefits. I'm not talking about oh boy, right? Because that's been the media narrative.
Mm-hmm.
That's been what the media been putting out there. But I just want to leave you with this. Picture the situation that a lot of Black people is living in, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have a policy like Stop and Frisk, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Black people are getting terrorized in their own neighborhood by not just the police, but these gangs, these bad actors, robbers, jack boys, all sorts of people in their neighborhood, and they are afraid to go to police, not just because the representation of snitching, is because oftentimes they go to police make the situation worse.
Exactly.
They come across police, they get harassed by police, and they get harassed by bad actors. So it's so what do? Literally, some people feel like they have nowhere to go. And that's when those type of people start looking for weapons to protect themselves because they don't feel like the government is looking out for them. They don't feel like they could go to the police. You go to the police, I might lose my life, or they might try to search me for something stupid. It is really like that. That's why police have to have the trust of the community as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can't send the popular term now is race soldiers, and a lot of these people are race soldiers. I mean, it's true. Not every cop, but a lot of them are.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't send some of these race soldiers in these neighborhoods and expect a bunch of people to cooperate with them when they're not looking out for the best interest of the people.
Mm-hmm.
It just is what it is. Let's get this economy going. Let's get these youth programs going. Let's get these community centers. And let's go from there.
People don't commit crime if they are in there's like a safety net. There's like a stable environment. Crime isn't going to be happening. We know this.
Yeah. Or
less crime will happen. Or better yet, less crime will happen. But we've always known this, and yet we don't ever try to do that. And we don't try to do that because there's a whole business behind policing and so forth, which I don't want to kind of get into. But not policing, but policing and criminal justice and so forth. That is bigger than this conversation. But yeah, we need to address the actual like root causes of this stuff instead of just trying to like find instead of just throwing people in prison and saying that's it. That doesn't solve anything. All you're doing is like either creating more people that are criminals or putting people in situations they aren't supposed to be in and have them terrorized in places that they shouldn't be at. If you're a low level like a person with weed, you're like just like a small like a blunt on you, and they arrest you and put you in jail for 5 years in a really harsh facility. Like that's not where you're supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like you're not supposed to be there, but you are there. And what happens? You either become a criminal or you get terrorized and jail and become a different person.
Right, or you could be in jail for years for supposedly stealing a book bag.
Yeah, this is nonsense.
Yeah.
It's nonsense, man. It's tiring.
So yeah, let's not just talk about crime without talking about the need for police reform and criminal justice reform. Yes, we can address two problems at the same time. It don't have to be either or.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll leave y'all with that. Make sure you subscribe, share, all that. Great show. We're on Spotify now too. So yeah, there we go.
Subscribe, y'all. Subscribe.
Peace.
Take care.